Okay, this video was meant to go out last week, but after my Wi-Fi card stopped working, I couldn't upload anything. Anyway, it's fixed now, so welcome to my thoughts on Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Where do I begin with this game? Essentially, the story is based on a board game or role-playing game called
Bunkers and Badasses, baby!
where you play with Fret, Valentine, and Tina, who is the dungeon master, and she can make changes to the game world whenever she pleases, which can obviously help you out or make things a little difficult. You play as the newbie. That's you, the greyed out character, to begin with, and you're tasked with taking down the Dragon Lord. That's it, basically. Overall, I enjoyed it. It has a good, entertaining story, and I think the new direction with the gameplay elements was executed well. Instead of grenades, we now have spells that culminates well with the medieval style the Borderlands series took. We also have the new overworld, which is essentially a bird's eye view of the board game itself, and acts as the full map of the game that lets you travel to any location you've unlocked, and you can obviously pick up some side quests, find new secrets and permanent bonuses to aid your character in your journey. Multi-classing is a thing now, so in addition to choosing one of the several classes at the beginning of the game, you can choose a secondary one later in the story, so you can have two classes in one, which opens the door for multiple build setups and a reason to create a new character for another playthrough. There's so many class combinations you can experiment with. I actually went with the Spore Warden first since I was solo. It's the best for survivability in my opinion. You can do a lot of range damage with it, and you can unlock the companion for extra support. They can distract enemies and revive you if things get a little chaotic as well. I actually paired this with the spell shot to help with my skill and spell cooldowns. I'm not sure what build I was going for. It was sort of like a hybrid, like a jack of all trades sort of thing, but it ended up being a spell / action skill based class. It probably needs to be respec though, because I'm getting my ass kicked in the chaos chamber. I'll talk about that later. Character customization was very detailed this time. You're able to adjust things like your height, voice, hairstyles, face shapes. You can even change the angle, spacing and size of your eyes, or even turn on the slider overdrive and randomize your character to make them look as ridiculous as possible. Oh yeah, and you can even choose your character background to help give your class a boost in stats before you start the game. They even show you which ones are recommended for each class too. As for the humour, I think it was there. A lot of jokes landed for me. You'll meet a lot of characters that have a funny story to share with you. I know a lot of people didn't like the humour in Borderlands 3, but I think Tiny Tina made up for that. It was good fun with all the interactions we had in cutscenes with NPCs, bosses, and obviously the real world characters themselves. Fret, Valentine, and Tina. There were moments improvisation was needed, so they all chipped in to make stuff up, which I found to be funny at times. One thing I can appreciate is the locations. There's loads of places to go to, and given the crazy amount of side quests, you'll spend a lot of time roaming around these areas. I like that. It does get a bit bare after you've done all the side quests obviously, but there are some endgame things that are meant to keep you playing sort of, but we'll get to that. For the gameplay itself, it's as to be expected really, similar to Borderlands 3 if you've played it. Not too much to say on it, although I think melee weapons are a lot more significant in this game, even if you aren't using a melee class, and I will say, with the action skills and spells, your screen may look a little wild at times. This has been said a lot by YouTubers, almost like there's too much going on with all the elements, explosions, casting the spells, gunfire, and enemies screaming for dear life. I'm on PS4 and I haven't had too many issues with frames. When it gets crazy, it does freeze up for a second, but that's literally only happened to me like 3 or 4 times, and I've got a little over 25 hours in the game at the moment. So all platforms should run fine, including old generation consoles. And of course, there's lots of loot to choose from, although you'll find that the models look the same for most weapons, they just have different properties, elements, or description. Interestingly, I noticed a lot of my legendary drops were cosmetic items throughout the whole game really. My luck was terrible. I made the mistake of just pushing through the story first rather than exploring the game in general, because there are definitely some permanent bonuses I could have used to help with loot luck. The main story itself is very short, but because you have to be a certain level to do some of the main missions, you'll have to do a lot of side quests, so the game could take around 20 hours, which ain't too bad. One thing I'll recommend to new players is anytime you go to a new location, whether that's in the overworld or a specific area, don't just do the main quest. If it's available, like your level is high enough, I'd suggest doing all the side quests there, finding secrets, etc. Anytime you go to a new location, just try and complete everything. You guys may already do this anyway, but as I said, I made the mistake of trying to rush through the story, skipping side quests, and that only made my endgame cleanup harder, because I had to go back to every location to see which ones I was missing. The overworld is cool and all, but it's a pain because you can't exactly fast travel to the specific location you want. You have to go find that area, so run around with your little bobblehead. Once you go into that specific location, you can fast travel within it. It's not like Borderlands 2 anymore where you can fast travel from the main hub to any location. You actually have to run around and find it this time. But the overworld isn't too hard to learn anyway, it's not that big of a map. But yeah, just keep that in mind because fast traveling is no longer fast. But yeah, it's a solid game, however there's just one thing I don't like and I can't stress this enough. It's the encounters. There are just too many of them. The overall concept of the endgame activities is encounters. In short, these are basically random events where an enemy will spawn in the overworld, either blocking your path or chasing you down. And yes, sometimes they will chase you for a while, and if they touch you, the encounter automatically starts. I don't know what happened here, but this guy moonwalked and somehow touched me without even touching me. I'm nowhere near the guy, what the hell? Maybe it's a bug, but that was annoying. But anyway, you're put into one of these small to medium sized arenas and have to fight a wave of enemies and win in order to leave. You also get some rewards at the end of the encounter, and you can actually melee these guys if you time it right to avoid the encounter altogether. But yeah, that's how they were introduced. However, this game mode is literally pasted onto pretty much all of the endgame activities you can do, except it's given a different name. In the overworld, there are these things called encampments dotted around the area. They look like this. They're essentially encounters. I think it gives you an achievement when you complete them all, but that's it. Apart from the chance of some decent loot, that's all they're there for. The same goes for these shrines. They're cool. Wouldn't say there's a story to it, but there's a process you have to go through to unlock the rewards from it. Some of them are hidden in the overworld, and you may need to travel through a glowing door of sorts to get to them. And you guessed it, the glowing door is just another encounter to complete. And the same goes for these dungeons. It's just another word for an encounter, except you'll notice it's more of the serious ones, as it has a glowing metal door of sorts with a skull on it. This has multiple stages and a mini boss you have to defeat in order to get a reward, but the principle still remains. It's just a bunch of encounters. Then lastly, you have the Chaos Chamber, which I believe was supposed to be the main endgame content for players alongside the Myth rank. Now you know what I'm gonna say. The Chaos Chamber is essentially another set of encounters. Except there's actually a random boss at the end, and you can change the type of run you want to do and tweak the game's difficulty as you progress through each stage. You can make it harder or easier and even choose the rewards you want before the next round starts. At the very end, you get a chest of rewards, and you can use the crystals you collected during your run to get a random weapon of any type, spells, armor mods, etc. This was calm for me though, because with the Chaos mode there's a difficulty scale. Every time you beat a Chaos Chamber run, you can increase your Chaos level from 1 onwards up until you reach level 20, which not only increases the health and damage enemies do to you in game, but your rewards increase in quality or rarity too. Or more or less, the higher your Chaos level, the higher the chance of you getting better loot, I should say. So if you want the best builds, it's essential you do this really. It's keeping me occupied, even though the concept of it being a recycled set of encounters is still there. You know, my weapons suck. I need better ones, so it's something for me to do really, as I'm stuck at Chaos level 7, and the bosses are starting to kick my ass, I won't lie. You know, you'll find some annoying bosses in this game, especially if their stats are increased with the help of the Chaos mode. And don't think I forgot about the DLC, it's a good thing I didn't buy this thing. Coiled Captors was a bit disappointing for most fans, that's the vibe I got. Obviously they fixed some things, bugs and all that, and you can even name your pets now. The Chaos level is increased from 20 to 35, and I think it's available to all players. You don't actually need to own the DLC to do this part, but the biggest problem was the fact that it was so short. It's literally 20 minutes, someone speedran it in 7. I'm gonna say it again, the content itself is basically a Chaos Chamber run, or series of encounters I should say, with a big shark boss we saw in the trailer. All you do is talk to one person and you're on your way with the run. This was to be released over a 4-week period as a way of extending playtime, so you get 4 encounters essentially, which is about 1 hour of game time, but you do get to spin a wheel of sorts at the end for some rewards. So yeah, you kind of get the gist as to why I'm getting a bit annoyed at this game, because not only was their DLC lacking, it's just the fact that a large portion of the game itself is just reused encounters with different names and slight tweaks to make it somewhat distinguishable from the rest of them. Now in their defense, this game was most likely being produced during lockdown, so there may have been some things they wanted to do but just couldn't with all the restrictions. But if you're looking to buy this game, I'd say wait for it to go half price. If it's just for the story or you want to play with friends, get it at a discount. The game will be 10 times better with friends, let's be real, they all are, but the endgame stuff is just too repetitive with all the encounters, and if you buy the DLC on top of that, you're literally getting an extra 20 minutes to an hour of the same thing, which I don't think is worth more than £60. It's just jarring, you know, but at the same time, what else could they have done to substitute that? I wouldn't know, so maybe I'm wrong in this, you know, how could they diversify their endgame content and avoid recycling the same old process? Because right now, everything just leads into the same outcome, you know, completing an encounter, Chaos Chamber, dungeon, whatever you want to call it, it's the same concept. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what the future DLC holds, but yeah, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is still a good game. You know, the new twist with the medieval Dungeons and Dragons style gameplay and multi-classing was really cool. It's a fun story to play with friends, defo get it if you have people to play with, just don't buy it at full price. You know, the endgame stuff is way too repetitive, so hopefully they provide us with something unique in the coming updates. I hope this helps you guys in one way or another if you haven't bought it yet, but yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, see you later.